welcome in Minnesota, old coaches, young coaches, all the above from high school on down to even the little pikes. This is a series designated for um, coaches, whatever level you are at, whatever experience level you're at. We have one of the best to do it, Coach Wilkie, who I've had the pleasure of being coached under. So this is week 2. We already filmed our one, kind of going over our practice plan. And now I wanted to dive deeper into kind of what we need to do to create an offensive system
Mhm.
for the coach. And this can be there's many levels to this, whether you're doing it at a high school level, a middle school level, an elementary level. I think there's a lot of ways to attack this, and I think it's a really interesting subject that every coach is going to have to go through when you do end up climbing the ranks and you do get your first coordinator job, or you take over a middle school job that you kind of have to roll out your own offense.
Yeah,
Coach, I'm ready for this
100%.
one, man. This is going to be good.
Yeah, I'm really excited. For the defensive coaches out there, sorry, I guess, but maybe they learn something too. But I've been an offensive coach mainly my entire career. I had 37 years of coaching, 5 at the college level, 18 as a head coach, and the rest as an assistant coach in different positions. I guess I would say, when we're talking about building an offensive system, and I was fortunate enough to get to do that. There's a couple different ways that happens. It's like you said, if we've got some young coaches on here that get to pick up their first job as a middle school coach in in a school setting, like it's the community ed, or if they want to help out with a youth program. I've had this conversation over the years and running my own high school program where you really want to be helpful with the youth. So I do want to talk about, we've only got about 30 minutes, but I want to kind of hit on all that. But I would say, I think people watch a lot of football on TV, and what you see on TV and what is practical for young kids is not even remotely the same, And so I think that one thing you have to do is you have to teach what you know. And in order to do that, you really have to know the system that you want to run. My biggest suggestion to all of the young coaches on the offensive side, if you're thinking of being a coordinator, one of the best things you can do is learn how to coach the offensive line. I know that every OC wants to be a quarterback coach, and I did that too, but I've coached offense. I've coached every offensive position, right? And I think coaching the offensive line is the most eye-opening experience for a coordinator. I don't think the coordinator has to be the offensive line coach. I think it's the same battle that you have when you have the OC as a quarterback coach. What are you going to do on 3rd and 5 if you're a quarterback coach? Throw the ball. And you got the O-line coach over there like, run the ball, right? So I do think there's some bias in that for your position group, but I will say this, as if you want to be a coordinator and you want to build an offense, it starts at the offensive line, and you need to be able to understand blocking schemes against every front, and you need to be able to understand pass protections against every front. Now, when I say every front, I mean every front at the level you're coaching, right? So there's a huge difference and a learning curve for me too, as I left high school and got to the MIAC. That was a drastic change. College is a lot different. So I think, as you're building this, we want to start with, what is the system as you see it? Are you going to be Elk River with a power T? Are you going to be a wing T school? Are you going to be a power I formation team? Are you going to be a spread zone run team? What is your goal? Because I will tell you what you hang your hat on first is what is your run scheme. And I will say, coaches, when a new coach takes over a new offense coordinator, it's like, well, what's his system? And nobody starts off with, we run a quick pass game with a lot of concepts. Like, nobody starts with that. That's that to everybody else. They're like, well, you're 2nd down and 10 now. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do you hang your hat on in the run game? So the very first thing when you talk about an offensive system is, what does your run game look like? So I think, go ahead.
How does the coach get into that? So like thinking about, you have to know your system, you have to do it, but what about, is it probably something that you played in most likely? Because I mean, in my first year coaching, that's kind of what I did. But sometimes like maybe somebody doesn't enjoy playing in the system that they played and want to do something new. So
No, I get that too. I did not enjoy the system I played in high school. I went to college and, I was under Rob Bollinger, who's still a mentor of mine. And I learned so much in those years. And they had gotten in kind of the West Coast offense in the 80s. The Bill Walsh system had become kind of taken over. And, people talked about the run and shoot, and then we got to the air raid and things like that. We don't have to get into all that yet, but I think you do find something, and I'll just give you my philosophy right out of the gate. I personally believe that you have to have an offense that is adaptable to your athletes. And the one thing I thought I was successful at Andover when I was there, we were the smallest school in 5A. Before there was 6A, we were one of the bottom schools enrollment wise. And we managed to hang with those schools that were 1,000 kids bigger than us because I felt like we were able to adapt our strength to what our kids were good at. And the offensive playbook didn't change. But I'm a zone run guy. I really believe in the zone run game. Every coach doesn't have to believe in that. I believe in it because I think it allows you to block and attack all of the defensive structures without adapting your scheme as much as maybe other situations or plays that you have to toss out because they don't match up in an under front or an over front or an eagle front or whatever you're getting. So that's my philosophy. I'm also, as you know, when you played for me, I am a huge believer in 11 personnel. I love having the 3 wideouts, the 1 tight end, the 1 running back. I believe in shifting formation. So we can probably start with the formation piece. First of all, I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to build mine on the zone run game, an inside zone, outside zone run. And that's where we're going to learn and focus our teaching with that offensive line. Then when you're going position to position, you're going to say, okay, the quarterback has no read in this, but in my world, and I'm free to talk to any coach that watches this that wants to talk. I am not a coach that calls the play in with the direction. You know that. I know it was in 2007, 2006. We're playing at Anoka, and it's a huge rivalry game with Andover, and we have a good team. And I remember calling in a play, and it was more of a pin and pull type play. And we didn't run as much zone then. And my offensive line coach from the press box is like, that play's dead. So I sent the play in, right? She was saying like pin and pull right, and they walk out and they line up, and you're like, this play's over before it starts. So that got me on the process. That's where I got on the process. We could talk about the no huddle stuff later, but that got me on the process of teaching my quarterbacks and my offensive line, if we're going to run zone, which direction we want to run this play. So say we want to run that zone and let the defense line up. And it's like, okay, this is a better zone left than a zone right.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting in there and it's wrong. And so that's too. And I don't want to get too, that's going to get really deep for some of the young coaches, but I truly believe that's the teaching part of the game is we want to have the pen last. You heard me say that almost every day.
Yep.
And you can call a direction last. You have a way better chance to be right and give your players the opportunity to be right. So I'll start off with this. Whatever a coach wants to say is his run game. If it's a power I, you want to be in 21 personnel with a fullback or H-back, and you want to run, counter and pull. That's what I have to say. But I think the core of it all is in the run game is everything has to have, a tree to it. So in my world, if you're saying we're going to run an inside zone, what's the counter play to that? And what's the play action to that? So everything should have a tree. Not every play doesn't need a play action. Most of your, bread and butter plays, like what is the counter to that? When they say, hey, you're running inside zone, it's like, no, we're running counter now. And I think you got to see that with me where we could make a lot of plays look the same in formations and it wasn't the same look. And I think that's one of your advantages. But as far as the building of a playbook, if we're going through it, and I wish I had my board right here, we would start off with what is the personnel grouping that your personnel roster has? Do you have 3 tight ends? I'm a huge tight end guy. I truly believe in, and this would be my throw out to anybody. The tight end is you can have a great quarterback, all this kind of stuff, but I think the secret sauce to any good offense is that tight end that can block like a tackle and catch like a third wide receiver. for a bunch of reasons, but I always give this example to people. I go, name one of the top offenses in the NFL that you can't name the tight end. And most people are like, yeah, you're right. And that's really true. And that's true at the college level. And you see it at the high school level too. But at any rate, are you going to be an 11 personnel team, a 12 personnel team? What are you going to be? And then what is the run game you're going to build off of that? What is the strength? I had years, I see you've got Forest Lake in the background. Coach Biscow was a really good running back for me at Andover. And he knows how to run inside and outside zone. He's a fast kid. He's a state champion and sprint champion. And we wanted to use that as well. He was a smaller running back, so his pass pro was, so you have to figure out what are you going to do if the running back isn't a great pass pro because he's a smaller running back, right? I hope he's listening. Anyway, what are you going to do with the pass protection? Do you leave your tight end in and help and you get him on a swing route instead, like trade it off? So, but, you have to figure out that run game part first, and whatever it's going to be with personnel, but then you hit that bread and butter play. What is the play you hang your hat on that we're going to be able to run 20 to 25 times a game and be good at it? You don't have to get 5 yards on every play. You're going to get 1, then you're going to get 7, you're going to get 2, and you're going to get 4. But what is a play you can do? You got to work that against all of those fronts and situations, and then what is the counter to that play? So I think that's the first basis.
I think one of the easier things to do, at least when you're starting to coach, is like put in too much in, or kind of like over taxing your players and being like, well, I do want to have answers for everything. And easily you can be like, ooh, this idea. And then it's like way too much. And I think back to like offenses, I think you can have answers within your plays. And I think at Augsburg, that was something that we'd like, you have answers that usually, like, you can run 2 of the same plays that, like, your O-line is pretty much doing the same thing, but it really just changes one assignment from either the tight end, the H-back, whatever, and it can really change a play. So how do you, in doing the scheme, how do you be careful enough to not over put in plays?
I'll dabble in that question a little bit, and then let's hit that again when we talk about install.
Yeah.
In the next episode. But I would say that is a young coach mistake. I know one of the things you remember I got frustrated at Augsburg with is, sometimes you're getting a directive from your head coach that isn't necessarily your philosophy, but he's your boss. I don't like spending a lot of practice running plays that on your play sheet are going to get run 1 or 2 times. I think that's really frustrating when you're saying, hey, we're going to run this inside zone play, maybe with some different backfield looks, but for that offensive line, they need this look at these 2 different fronts that we're going to see. You can have all the trickery in the backfield, but if that offensive line can't block that base play that you have against every front without looking to the sideline, like what's going on, you've got issues, right? So to answer your question, I would say every coach will tell you this, less is more. And I think the same is true with formations. I love formations, but I learned really early in my career, this is a phrase all of these young coaches can use. You can have a lot of formations in a few plays, or a few formations in a lot of plays, but you can't have both. Your kids you'll get confused. And I've watched coaches, when you see colleges, or especially at the high school level, and I feel badly for the high school kids. I don't want to rip on any coaches, but it's a coaching mistake. When you see kids not able to line up and you see the play clock going in and the coach hammers a timeout and he's stomping out on the field, that's on the coach. That's on the teacher. That's not on the student. When you set a situation where you put too much on their plate, or they aren't able to grasp as much as you're giving them, the amount of time that you're giving them, that's on the teacher. So we didn't do that. I would be proud of that. That's one thing I learned early is, and that, and I can talk about this more in the install, but I am a huge formation movement guy. It's all about shift and motion. And I don't want 10% of my plays to be static when the ball snapped. There has to be a shift, a motion, a shift, whatever, so that defense is talking, right? So if we start with formations and we're talking about creating an offense, the very first thing in that playbook is formations, personnel groupings, motions, and shifts. That's the first thing you're going to teach all those kids. Then we're going to get to the run game, right? I always go from the run game to the quick pass game. You played for me. I mean, I try to keep the quick pass game to about 3 to 4 concepts. I think everybody has a slant concept, a hitch concept, a fade concept, right? And this is a whole nother topic, but you got to play under my, I'm a believer in Dub Maddox's R4 system. So if anybody wants to go down that rabbit hole with me on the side, jump in.
It's good.
But I really believe in Dub's system of progression, because you don't have to teach so many coverages to kids. As you learned when I taught you, you get to teach leverage and space, and you get to cancel things out quicker. Dub has turned up his system so much. For anybody that wants to check it out, he's got a whole VR setup. He's got like board game, all kinds of cool stuff. But on the base system, the quick game is next. What are you going to run on a rhythm set? And it's just a 1-2 release the ball. And I think that's for the young coaches, especially, you're not going to be able to teach pass protection and give this quarterback 3.5 seconds back there. This is 7th and 8th grade football, even up through sophomore football. That's kind of a luxury if you can. So the quick pass game is huge. And for those receivers as well, I think that those young receivers, they have to, that's a whole other, we're going from offensive line to receivers. Like when you're teaching releases and routes and having somebody there that can actually teach the foot positioning and the breaks on that, that's a huge luxury too for players, that coaches that will teach that leveraging. And hey, I'm available. If there's coaches out there that want anybody for spring or summer, anything else come out, I would do that. PSA, but I think that really, really matters. And then that sets up well with, as a quarterback, that you want to feel confident that player is open. Like, is that ball going to be thrown to an open receiver? And so I think that's the part that I go to with the quick game. And you don't have to have 500 plays. You have to have players that know how to run the right routes, run them well, and a quarterback to deliver to the open receiver on time. It's a time and space game on that. So questions on that?
Well, the simpler you can make it for your quarterback at no matter like what level, I think the better. So like when you're talking big thing, like eliminating throws before the snap even happens, like that's one of the biggest things that you can build into your system, that now when we eventually talk through installs and stuff like that, that now you guys can be on the same page, because your system, you're translating to your quarterback. And it's kind of the same wavelength. It was kind of like eye-opening to me going from high school to college, being like, oh yeah, this is actually like somewhat easy if you do think about it and you're coached properly on it, that it does simplify post snap and doesn't make my life total hell when I say go and I get the ball and I'm like, what am I looking at?
Right. Well, excuse me. I think, we talk about, the cushion collision concept and the foot alignment by the D-back. So we spent a lot of time talking about that, but I think your point is exact, where you say, as a quarterback, making a confident throw means everything. So when you can see that corner is his back heel, he's in a back pedal stance on the inside of the numbers, widest receiver, and his front foot's at about 5 yards, his back heel's at about 6, and he's in a back pedal mode. And you don't have to look at that receiver when you get the ball. You can take your 1-2 step, flip your shoulder, throw the ball, and know that he's going to back pedal out. Your receiver's going to stick his foot in the ground, and the ball's going to be on the way on time. You don't have to try to hit a window. Yeah. I think that's really huge. By the same token, now this is the battle I had. We talked about this before, where you have coaches out there that will see a squat corner and he's in a collision stance, right? Eyes on eyes. And the defense wants to confuse. They want to force you into that fade ball. Like, oh, we're giving the fade ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is why you talk pre-pass, pre-snap, post-snap with those kids, because it's like, so you take your drop, and just as you're about to snap the ball, that kid flips his hips and he backpedals out, and he's actually playing cover 4, or he's actually playing, you know what I mean, a soft man, or they rolled it, and he's actually playing cover 3. And now you just waste a fade ball down the sideline because you guessed it. Right. And so I think those are the repetitions that we get. And I think in the quick game, I mean, we can complete passes in the quick game. You don't have to have this fancy playbook for that.
Yeah. I feel like in high school, I grew up with, like, you go to your OC and they call a play and you're like, throw it to this guy. And it's like, okay, well, like, you're not really giving an I just think there's so much of that, even like at the middle school level, where it's like that's the worst thing to do, because you're going to make first of all, your player's going to look bad, especially maybe he is open, but there's probably a good chance that he is covered. And now,
do you remember, were you on the roster? I don't know if you're on the roster. I'm trying to think. That year we played Nebraska Wesleyan at home. And we took a timeout, and it was Treader in the slot, Dom Smith at the wide spot, and we just called our cap routes down there. And head coach yells, "Throw it to Dom," because he's our best player. And so Cade Sheehan just bounce steps and throws it to Dom. And the problem is, personnel P, right, cap. The problem is Treader's standing there wide open because the backer ran. And it's like, if you just let your quarterback read that, we win that game at the buzzer right there. And so I've never, ever yelled to a quarterback to throw it to a certain player. You teach them who to throw it to. So I teach the cap concept: collision cushion, hip angle, and then it's personnel. If everything else is gray and you don't have an idea, guess where you should throw it? To your best guy, and then throw it in a way that only he can get it, right? So, I think that matters, and I agree with that. But it's just that's just a teaching point for me that I really hang my hat on too, and what I've learned over the years. And if you teach your quarterbacks well, I think that's a huge deal on that piece. But so I think we start with run game, core run game, what you can hang your hat on. What's your 3 basic run plays first, with respect to what are we running downhill? What are we running counter, right, on each of those plays? And then we get to the quick game. So whatever your quick game is going to look like with respect to, a hitch, slant, fade, whatever, and what your combos are to that. That I'm a cap route guy on the backside. I do not mirror routes. I'll argue this to the death out there with coaches that want to say we just mirror our.
I can do a whole episode on.
Dude, I see it, and it's just so elementary to me, and no disrespect to guys that are doing it, but it's just wrong. And I will die on that hill that running mirrored routes is wrong. If it's wrong on the one side, why is it right on the other side? Why, you know what I mean? And so I think that, I'll come and clinic your team for you if you want me to, just to get that right. So then we go from quick game, and then when you start looking at, like, after you get your base pass game in, then I think a lot of coaches are either looking at the next chapters of the playbook are screen game and or your misdirection game. And I put misdirection with my run game, but sometimes people want to have their downhill stuff separate from their misdirection. I don't, because I think they have to look the same. So, like when we're running our inside zone, but we're running our counter concept to it, they should look the same. So I like to teach them at the same time with the quarterbacks on the mesh, whether you're under center or in the gun. So I would probably say screen game is next. Man, I've got some favorite go-tos of mine. You got to be part of all of them. I'll be honest with you. My least favorite screen is running back screen. I think it's hard. I think the timing of it to get it right is difficult. The quarterback's ability to play possum, so to speak, that they're getting rushed. The running back's ability to dip that guy he's supposed to block and get open. And then the lineman's ability to sift a rushing guy and get downfield and block somebody. Like, it's just a lot. When it works, it's awesome. But one of the reasons it works is if you've done your scouting report, it's like, man, they are bringing the blitz here, right? So you call it right into that. But that's my
It's also one
preference.
thing
But
to have a screen in your playbook and call it, or like actually practice it. Like you can tell the teams to practice their screens, because if you don't run screens a lot, you're not going to be good, and you're not going to be able to call it on Friday with it looking
and
good.
yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think too, it's hard to run it real in practice because your scout teams don't rush like a varsity
Right.
does.
Yeah.
So you don't get that real look all the time. I think when we did it at Augsburg, it's about the only time we were good at it is when we were going against the ones, because they cared more.
Right.
So I'm more of a tunnel screen guy, lateral screen wide receiver, bubble screen guy. I think those are more effective and easier. So we usually, and that we had a couple of those that we could hang our hat on. They're easy throws for the quarterback. The quarterback can exit out if he has to. He gets both side reads, so there's not like, I don't know where to throw this type of thing. Go from there, going with situations. So
before we get into the situations, real quick.
Oh yeah, we're at 30 minutes already. So.
Pre and post RPOs, like when you introduced it, like the pre-snap RPOs, like the bubble, the outside screen or whatever.
So yeah, those were from 2001, 2000. Those are going back to like 1999, like Rich Rodriguez stuff in 99, 2000. That stuff was crazy because what happens is if you're a zone run team you can do it under center. It's just different because you have to worry about an edge hand up. But Rich Rodriguez was, he's at West Virginia and they're in the gun. And basically you're taking that outside linebacker who's trying to basically play the middle. He wants to kind of guard that slot receiver, but basically be an edge attack. And it's like, we're not going to let him do that. So the bubble, the pre-snap RPO, yes, I like it. We still did it. It still has some effectiveness to it. The problem in today's defenses I feel like they're a lot more versatile in how they will switch that on you and kind of fake the quarterback sometimes, but it's still huge. I'm just a post snap guy. We use the pre snap just to protect the zone run game so we don't get the edge attacker, but the post snap RPO is my baby, and I love all of them. I was up at my alma mater at the University of North Dakota a couple weeks ago, and they had a couple just beautiful backside glance RPOs, where the linebacker's trying to fill in that backside. It's like, we're not going to let you do that. We're not going to let you put an extra guy in the box. You got to go play defense on him. And so that's a huge part. But I guess the only other thing I'd get to as far as, putting this in a box is, and we can talk about this when we talk probably in episode 4, we'll talk about building practice scripts. But what are you going to do in situations? What is your heavy package on short yardage? What is your goal line package? What does that look like with the roster that you have in terms of the players? And not everybody has enough big dudes to, put both hands on the ground and just power it in the end zone from the 3-yard line. So some teams are better off staying in a 10 personnel and spreading them out. And, so everybody's got their philosophy on that. But my question is, what are you going to do and how are you going to practice that? And then lastly, and I practice this a ton, and the way I do it, I'm really picky about it, is your 2-minute offense. And that's got to be a part of your playbook. How do you do it? And I can go through how I do it, but how do you do it? What are you going to do? What do you do on dead balls? What do you do on a penalty? What do you do on a first down? What happens when the clock's running? I think I've been pretty successful over the years. We've won a bunch of games over the years in 2-minute drill because we practice it a lot. And you have to practice it at the end of practice when kids are tired, and it's got to be similar to and that's how we don't condition. That's your conditioning, right? Do it. You have to think, line up the pass protection and go from there. So I think that's kind of in a nutshell, I guess, a little bit of if people are note taking at all. That's where I would be with all of that on a core, even from an 8th grader to even, high school football. If you got somebody that's coming in and, here's my new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that 2-minute offense can almost be a separate episode because I see so many middle school teams like not prepared. If you're a huddling team, which a lot of teams are, and you don't have if you're signaling things in, your no huddle offense kind of is a lot easier to go through because most of your stuff is available to be called through signaling. But when you're huddling and you got to, I mean, I can think back to my high school days. We had a 6-play no huddle sequence that was 6 like pre-decided plays that when I'm thinking back to it's like, how can you like
Yeah,
you
you're
you
guessing.
can't really
Well,
tell
I guess
if
I
the
would
first play
say,
goes bad, are we really gonna run the next
yeah.
5 the way that you're planning on it?
Well, I would say this, and you and I were both at the Prep Bowl, watched the Prep Bowl games, and I don't want to pick on coaches, but this is what happens when you have some of these teams roll through a section, never have to run 2-minute offense, and then you get in the Final Four of the state. Well, all the teams are good now, and you have a team that their quarterback runs to the sideline to get the play call, and they're still huddling, and the
So much
clock is
time.
just running
And yeah,
down.
and
And
you get
so
down 14, that's a lot of time.
yeah, and it's just like, so I feel like there's better systems out there that, coaches aren't preparing their teams well enough. And if I say anything to finish this episode, as a head coach, I never in a million years wanted anybody in the stands or a coach watching my film to say, wow, they weren't prepared for that. We go through every situation. What are you doing when you're backed up on your own 2-yard line and there's 3 minutes to go in the game and you're up by 5? Like, what are you going to do there? What is your, so those are some things we can talk about in our, our next couple episodes. But I think that those are definitely things that some coaches don't spend enough time on. And then you get caught with your pants down in a game and, you let those kids down. I always felt like, my job was to give those kids the best chance to win. And I probably was more sleepless over losses if I felt like there was something that happened in the game that was my fault. I could have done a better job, wasn't prepared, whatever. So I think we want to avoid those situations. So, but yeah. What are we going to talk about in the next episode?
Excellent. Next episode is going to be kind of like our install schedule type. We did practice plan the first one. You guys hopefully have already watched that. Now we covered kind of what our offense is, what do we want to build, how do we want to build it, stuff like that. And then we'll get into, okay, now we have our offense, we have what we want to run. Now let's install it and
let's build a practice script. I think I've got a practice script system that I use that I'm excited for that episode, because I think I don't care how long you've been coaching. I always like to see how do you organize your practice? Like, how do you organize what you're going to run in the game? So I'm looking forward to those episodes too. So yeah. Well,
all right. Well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Take care.